This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. This is Games of the Week. Hello, mate. How you doing?
How's it, Brett? I love watching 8s and 9s now and how they combine. And the game that we're going to speak about, because it's the only game, the only test match coming up, I'm really fascinated by the 8s and 9s in this particular matchup, I got to say.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one, and I'm looking forward to very much getting into it. It's the end of another rugby week, and we would very much love for you to go back and check out episode 43 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast with Irish sports writer and playwright Pat McCarry, which was another really enjoyable conversation, mate, that just gave us great insight into the state of play around the Ireland team and what they're worried about as well with Joe Schmidt coming back to town.
Yeah, Pat's a lovely fellow, and he's one of those guys that you could just have a good chat with regardless, even if it wasn't about rugby. But he's all in. He's inundated. He's immersed, and it's really fun. I think it's every country in this particular era is trying to replace somebody. And, you know, the hardest one is, I think, 10. I just think it is. I think there's so many things going on around a 10. So if you had one single player that you don't want to have a succession controversy, it's probably that. So that might work for the Wallabies. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe. We will see. Let's get into it then. The final games of the week for 2024, or perhaps game of the week is probably more appropriate. There is one last international for the November period and for the year. Ireland v Australia at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin, 3:10 p.m. local time. It's 2:10 a.m. on the Australian East Coast. That's Eastern Daylight Time, Queensland.
That's an interesting kickoff time, by the way, in Ireland.
3:10. Yeah, so it was the same as the Fiji game last week.
Yeah. So there were a couple of, there were a couple of Friday night lights, and it seemed like Ireland was really going to be into it, the whole Dublin area, and then that first one got off to a rough start with New Zealand. And so then they didn't want them anymore. And then the French tried their Friday Night Lights thing, and it kind of worked a little bit better. But I do find it very interesting, the difference between a game in the afternoon and the difference between a game at night, especially one of those late starts. It's actually phenomenally different for some reason.
It's a completely different game.
Yeah,
in some cases, isn't it? It's really strange. Yeah, and there are URC games in Ireland later in the day. I think that's part of the reason why it is at 3:10 too. So
I'd love for some statistician to go through this and derive if there are particular players that are really good late night players, and then there are people who are like your kicking percentage goes way up at night, or it's dips in the afternoon. I would love to know those little tiny hyper stats.
Well, but even, you know, is there a difference between like kick meters in an afternoon game to an evening game?
Yeah,
my gut feeling is that there would be, and it would be quite pronounced.
Yeah, me too. And I've always felt also that there were certain players. Actually, this happens a lot in tennis, where you have a Grand Slam, and you just have to play when the draw allows you to. And the U.S. Open famously will go to 1 a.m. And there's just some people who can perform at midnight and other people who are done. So that's an interesting factor. I always thought the French kind of profit from that a little bit because their culture is more late night. So if they start a game at 9 and Stade de France, they're like, this is fine. And I always feel like some of the other teams, I don't know who I would suggest right now. Maybe the Welsh would go, oh, it's time to go to bed.
Well, look, a 9:10 p.m. kickoff would never wash in Australia, and I suspect not even New Zealand either, because, I mean, when there's a 7:45 kickoff, it's like, what about the families? 9:10, no chance, absolutely no chance at all. What are you looking most forward to from this game in Dublin this weekend?
Well, I mean, obviously, my orientation is much more from the Wallaby Australian side because of where I write and what I write about and who I'm hanging out with in the rugby world. But I got to say, I'm actually equally as interested this week in Ireland itself, perhaps because of Pat's chat, but maybe because I do think there's some interesting selection dilemmas. And what I've seen in this Autumn Nation series is I think the Irish team has been one of the most interesting ones because it going into it, I would have said, oh, they're going to handle this really well. They're going to sweep all aside. They'll handle New Zealand. They barely handled Argentina, and they lost to New Zealand. And along the way, I've started to think, well, who is the best backup? Who is the best nine? Who's this young hooker they have now? What is the best midfield? For ages, we said it doesn't matter. It's Aki, it's Ringrose, it's Henshaw, it's McCloskey. It doesn't matter. They're all so good.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, no, I think there are some differences. And that midfield clash, if you have to put me down on one thing, I'd say the midfield clash is quite intriguing.
Yeah, well, it looks like Joseph Sua Ali will be back for the Wallabies. I would presume if he's back and if he's going to be fit to play after that, was I think everyone assumed was a broken wrist or broken arm or something last week. If he's back from that,
yeah,
I would expect he would start. And so, yeah, that's probably Lenny Tau back to 12 again. They already seem to have a really good combination, which is really good. But if the reporting out of Ireland is correct as well, then we're talking about Archie and Henshaw as a 12-13. And I think that's what you're alluding to in terms of your best centre pairing.
Yeah, I mean, you go back 6 months and everyone's saying it's Ringrose. You go back 12 months, it's Henshaw. Henshaw and Ringrose have had quite a ding-dong battle. Henshaw is the more experienced one, probably the more of a footballer. He's big, though. I mean, actually, it's interesting when you're at the grounds in the Viva, and it was sort of at a good spot to be sort of eye level on the field, kind of. And I was really surprised by how big the Irish backs were. And Osborne, they're like a big fellas. And Henshaw, if you just saw Henshaw and you didn't know what position he played, I don't know if you would pick 13. So he's a bit of a flank. I actually think that it's a good test. I thought the Scottish midfield had the edge on the Wallabies. I know there was an injury there that roiled it, but I think the big work on is not attack. Ikitau is an attacking, maestro, and Suwali has those instincts. I think it's going to be on defense.
Oh, it is. It's no question it's going to be on defense.
Jake Gordon was asked where does Ireland get its stuff from, and he said the power comes through the midfield. And I think that's spot on. I think if Aki is running at you full tilt and you're Joseph Akuso Suwali, you are in a learning curve because there's a bit of a barrel coming at you downhill. It's different.
Whether you want to be or not, it's going to be crucial that the seams, the links between lock, back row, midfielder is strong, and that there's nothing there to exploit. Because you're right, if the Irish midfield can start denting that line and making meters up through the middle, then Ireland will wave into attack from there. That's absolutely going to be the biggest thing, and it was something that Scotland started exploiting late in the game last week, no doubt.
Yeah, so and two things are a little bit interesting there. Just like with props, sometimes the shorter prop can give you troubles. Like an Ox Inche could give a tall prop, like a Tyrrell Lomax. So Sione Tupeloto looked very squat and low center of gravity, and was quite difficult to get that low. And so now Bundy Aki sort of plays very subterranean as well.
Yeah,
that's the first thing. Second thing is Bundy Aki runs inside lines from 12. A lot of the other 12s, like a Jordy Barrett's always trying to find the outside shoulder. Yeah. He's, sort of flowing to space. So does the French backs. I think Damien De Allende and Bundy Aki both do something similar, which is they will run at the 10. They don't want the 12. They want the 10. And so they end up getting right in that, like you say, the seam. And that's going to be, I guess, Noah and Joseph are going to have to, two biblical names. They're going to have to be on the same page of the Bible.
But it's going to be, it's going to be Harry Wilson in there as well. It's going to be, Nick Frost in there potentially. It looks like Will Skelton didn't get to sweet talk Ronan O'Gara, and he is back in France this week. So, Jeremy Williams comes back into the front. Actually, I'll be curious to see whether Lucan Salakar-Loto perhaps holds his starting position. He'd been very, very good off the bench. But, if Williams has had an up and down week, then maybe the safe option is to bring him off the bench. We'll find that out. where Ireland sit is an interesting one. And as we talked with Pat the other day, this is an important test for Ireland as much as it is for Australia.
It is. I think it would be incredibly disappointing for them to lose as favorites at home against still an up-and-coming, retrenching kind of Wallabies outfit where Ireland was just recently number one in the world. And they're still a clear number two, right in there with the French and the Kiwis. So I would think it would represent quite a backward step. The second thing is that you have this old relationship between the coaches that, I say, whatever we say, these are still humans, highly competitive guys, and they would really hate it no matter what they say. And they'll lie. They'll say, oh, I'm happy for him, but they would not be happy. They would be very upset. And so I think it almost plays more in Joe Schmidt's favor because he's not the one expected to win. I think the other part of that is Ireland is trying to figure out in this era of different emphases and no block, no guard, no escort. They're trying to do something which they've always held on to possession for a long time. And you're looking at the Wallabies trying to do the same thing. So it's actually interesting because you have two teams probably trying to do the same thing to each other, and we'll see.
It's going to be a quiet day for fullbacks. It's going to be a lot of 10-15 phase rugby being played, I suspect, but that will be interesting in itself because Joe Schmidt and Andy Farrell have obviously spent a lot of time together as colleagues. They have similar mindsets about how to play and how they want to play the game. Their preferred patterns and shapes out on the field are not too dissimilar. Australia has been an evolution of the Joe Schmidt mold in the same way that Andy Farrell has evolved the Joe Schmidt method with Ireland. So it's just going to be really interesting to see two guys who know each other and they know their methods very, very well. Which piece do they move? What's going to be the chess move? To start the game, never mind in the 40th minute, the 60th minute, the 79th minute.
Yeah, and I suppose in this game, if it's relatively decided at 55 minutes, then we know it was Ireland who probably won. If it's still in the balance at 65 minutes, 75, then the Wallabies are right in there, just like the 13-10 loss in 2022 with, I think it was Bernard Foley was actually the fly off that time. Yep. And Noah didn't even get off the bench. He was an unused sub. But that was an interesting game because the Wallabies spoiled the ruck. They allowed no flow. It was actually one of the lower ruck completion rates. So we might be sitting here thinking it's going to be this, everyone wants to use the ball possession. It might be the opposite, which is sometimes with two very similar teams trying to do the same thing, it cancels each other out and you have one of those arm wrestles, which I love.
Which then is interesting in itself, isn't it? Because if the ruck becomes, an absolute mess because of the way they're trying to play each other, not because of the way it's being officiated. If it becomes a mess, then the pull-out option would be just, well, let's just kick, let's just get down the other end of the field. But are they both going to want to do that? Like if it turns into a kick fest, then they're both playing the opposite game they want to. So this is why I say it's a fascinating contest for so many reasons.
Yeah, it's a bit of a chess game, and you can kick in such a way that you virtually have to kick it back. I mean, there are heights and times and hang times on a ball and locations where unless you're incredibly daft, you're gonna kick it back. So that can happen, and there's nothing we could do about that. You just have to kick better. So that's interesting too. Tom Wright has been a counter-attacker par excellence this whole season. And I don't think he played very well against Scotland because they turned him into a different thing. So I guess if I was Joe Schmidt, I'd say to Tom, that's fine. Everyone has a bad game here and there. But this is perfect because you're probably going to be put under a lot of pressure this week. I actually think there will be kicks of choice. I think they'll kick on their own term. Both sides will kick on their own terms. They're not going to want to get caught by a Josh van der Fleer trying to, Ty Byrne, trying to mount an attack from their 30 meter. It's a fool's errand. You're going to get caught.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see which team is able to offer more protection for their kick catches and who can get away with it.
it's very subtle right now. Like
Yeah, it is.
you have to almost. I like Jeff
It has
Bart's
to be.
idea of putting a guy up front that goes up, but then actually, whoops, the ball go behind him. So you end up having, accidentally on purpose blockers. You just have everyone go up for the kick.
Yep.
No, I think beyond the midfield where you have some classy operators, Aki, Henshaw, Suali'i with his promise and his beginning, and then Iketal. I also think that the men on the floor, Josh van der Fleer, Tyburn, Fraser McWright, one of the really up and coming guys, and I think there's also the idea of who can carry the best under pressure. Rob Ballatini could have been one of the top 4 players in the world. If he'd been nominated, I don't think he would have batted an eyelid. I think he deserved it. So he was probably the only Australian player that probably deserved to be in that level. So you have guys like him against guys like Kalen Doris, who did make that list. So I think there's proper matchups across the board. What I don't know, because we don't have the teams yet, is on the nines, who starts and who finishes. And that's interesting to me, the 8-9 combo.
Yeah, Gordon will start for Australia. I've got no.
And so who comes in at that second, that final, if the Wallabies are in it and it's that final 25 to 30 minutes, what does that look like? And does the shape change? Because I think
it'll be McDermott. They've played too much like that to change it now.
Yeah, that's fascinating. If it's Casey versus McDermott, it is fireworks. Yeah.
Two wily young nines who want to play the same game, isn't it? So exactly. That's interesting. I'll ask the same question to both teams. What do Ireland definitely need to get right?
Well, they have to get right something that they haven't been getting right, which is Ireland has struggled to understand the internal clock that you need on clearing rucks, box kicking. They've been caught more than any other team on the 2-second, 5-second thing. Yep. They have struggled to run decoy lines intelligently enough not to get caught. They're being pinged on that. So I suppose Ireland's got to show crisp precision, spatial awareness. What time is it? What am I doing? So that thing we always thought they were the best at, they're kind of slipped down.
Yep.
And I got to say, I think they're probably going to put together a pretty good performance. My gut tells me Ireland will put a proper performance on the field because I think they're frustrated. And I think
because they feel like they need to.
They need to give that to their fans.
Yep. Conversely, what do Australia definitely need to get right?
The whole season, they've let in too many points, too many soft tries. I think the Wallabies have increasingly looked better and better on their attack shapes. They do have some triangle diamonds working in the midfields and second, third phase. They're doing really good at shooting. They have good inside lines, diagonals. I just think they give up a couple of stupid tries, even against England. Even though they won, I thought, oh, no, don't give up that try. So I think it's going to be – and Ireland's just too good to hope that they butcher a try. I think they've got to they're going to exit quicker, exit surer, don't need to angle every time to exit. Just get clean ball and exit. Keep it simple.
Yep. Just get it out. I think Australia need to lead early. Like they need to definitely be leading at halftime, and they need to score first after the break. And if they can do that, if they can extend a lead in the first 10 minutes after halftime, then there'll be a chance. But if they trail at the break and then concede more points straight afterwards, it's going to make it very difficult because
you aren't allowed to do that. That's Kiwi stuff. Only New Zealand's allowed to score right before the break and after the break.
Exactly. And look, Ireland have got enough experience around the park now that they can close out a game with their defence. Yeah. So Australia's got to make sure they are in the contest, like you said, in the 65th, 75th minute. It's got to be still in dispute for the Wallabies to be any chance, I think.
I think you're exactly right. And often when you trace back why someone was not in the lead or had a rough start, and you focus too much on, the final missed tackle 5 meters from your own line, it was never that. It was almost always a bad kick, a poor exit, a muffed line out. It's these early match errors in the first 20 minutes when you kind of just want to say to your guys, we don't have to be flashy in Dublin. We don't want to go in to oranges looking at a 10 or 12-point lead, because then probably it's good night, Irene. We're done.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's probably right. We'll be back on Saturday evening, UK time, Sunday morning, obviously in Australia, with the final Test match post-mortem of the year as well after
Cool.
in Australia, and that will be cool. There'll be plenty to talk about, I'm sure. It is the resumption of the ERC, mate. We pick things up again at round 7. Glasgow Scarlets on Friday night, Ulster Leinster at the same time in Belfast Friday night. Then on Saturday, it's Sharks Stormers in Durban, Cardiff hosting the Dragons at the Arms Park, Connacht against the Bulls in Galway, Edinburgh Benetton in Edinburgh, Munster Lions in Limerick, Zebra Ospreys in Parma. What's your pick there? I actually like the look of Connacht against Bulls. That's 50 against 3rd. That looks like a good game.
That'd be fun. I like Munster Lions, even though Munster will be without some of its players. I think that's a good matchup. Interesting, fun.
Yeah, where are the Lions currently? They're still top couple.
I think they only have 1 loss, so they got to be up there. They only just got their first loss recently before the breaks. And a shout out also to
Munster 12th though. Yeah, that's why I didn't notice.
Yeah, they have to climb. Shout out to Stephen Kitsoff, one of the great rugby players, and certainly one of the ERC stalwarts, scrum god. He just went through a 6.5 hour operation, one of those fusing things in his neck, and no word yet if you'll ever play rugby again. That's not the issue. I always called him one of the happiest bucks they ever were, and so shout out to him and his family. They really came. It was a success, but that doesn't mean he can play again.
No,
and it's a reminder to everyone like how transitory rugby can be, a career, and how tough this is, and how many guys routinely get hurt. I think, listen. The Orcs, it's going to be going, but it's going to be tough to really get into the swing of things until probably about a couple more weeks.
Yes. That was the point that I was going to make. It's going to be. It's actually going to be hard for the guys involved too to make the adjustment from the intensity of international rugby just to getting back into the grind of competition games again. So,
what coaches will want to say to their guys is, this is the time when people aren't that intensely into it. This might be a time for
this is like time to cash in. Yep, absolutely.
Take a step up.
Yep. So you're saying Munster Lions is a game of the week there, or are we sticking with Connacht?
I am interested in watching the Lions right now. So the Lions don't have as many people. They have they have no box. So everyone is like, the team is the team. And so I've been really enjoying their style of play, and I actually kind of always like watching Munster for some reason.
Yeah, fair. Round 7 of the Premiership as well starts Friday night at the Twickenham Stoop in London. Harlequins hosting Bristol. Newcastle play Saracens the same time on Friday night as well. On Saturday it's Northampton, Gloucester, and Bath, Exeter, and then on Sunday it's Sale and Leicester in Salford. Harlequins Bristol Friday night at the Stoop is 53rd. That could be a fun game.
There's 2 very different style games there. You have Sale against Leicester, that should be a grind, and then you have Quins versus Bristol, and that's just going to be
could be 42-37. Yeah, exactly right. That could be anything, that one. Round 11 of the top 14 in France. The 2 that jumped out at me are Racing v Toulouse in Paris on Saturday. That's 8th against 1st. Clermont v Castres is 5th against 6th. So that's probably a bit of an interesting one as well, I think.
Yeah, I probably would only catch one top 14 match, and I'd probably go with that Racing game. I think that looks interesting.
Yeah, I think so. It sort of feels like that they're maybe starting to get back into the swing of things. So yeah, you could well be right. But sorry.
No, I'm just saying, every time Toulouse plays, they always have enough players to play, no matter who's out and who's resting. they have 3 teams.
It's the joy of 70-man squads, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway. But there it is, mate, full time on Games of the Week for 2024. It's been an enjoyable addition to the stable, I must admit. I have enjoyed these chats, these start of the weekend chats is what they are.
Yeah, it makes you prep and you end up being more interested in more games, which I think is a positive for rugby. So they're just in choosing a game, I have to sort of look at the top 14 schedule, which I might not do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely wasn't doing it before this year. So yeah, it absolutely works that way. So tell us what you think about our Games of the Week right here on the 8-9 Combo YouTube channel. You can hit the 8-9 Combo up on all the socials. You can tell Harry and I in our usual places as well. And we are now all on Blue Sky as well. And that includes the pod itself at 8-9 Combo there. Make sure you're all subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you're following on the pod platforms wherever you tune in, and make sure you've got notifications turned on and all that as well, however you consume. This is Games of the Week from the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay, he's Harry Jones, and we'll be back in your ears with the test match post-mortem following Ireland v Australia in Dublin.
Come, play with us. The final countdown.